For All Mankind is back with Season 4 of the show, and this alternative timelined past has now landed in the 21st century in 2003, with the mining of asteroids looking like it's one of the latest crazes in order to make Mars self-sustainable. Let's dig into the season premiere, break down the episode, and explain all that there was to take away from it. So let's get into it. Here is For All Mankind Season 4 Episode 1, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Edward's grief. Within this episode, we saw that Grigori was sadly left to die due to an accident occurring whilst the crew were hoping to haul the asteroid back to Mars in order to examine it and utilize the resources that it had so that it could help develop the planet to make Mars sustainable. Grigori's death was something that didn't only impact everybody back on Earth and Mars, but it was something that impacted Edward in an extreme amount of ways, as he was the person who had to press the button to release what was attached to the asteroid. This led him to have tears in his eyes, whilst also seeing later on in the episode that he was looking over at where Grigori would suit up, and he had a reflective look on his face, showing that this was one that hit him hard. During this first episode, we found out that Edward hadn't been home for several years, despite promising that he'd return to Kelly and Alex. To me, this shows a couple of different things. It shows that he's deeply connected to being out there, and he fears that he'll mourn the life that he's grown to become so used to. It seems like he almost wouldn't know how to function back home. Plus, at one point, with it seeming like his hands were shaking uncontrollably, I think he could have some kind of illness that may prevent him from going back into outer space if he were to land on Earth once being medically examined. That, or he doesn't want his family to find out that there might be something wrong. With the last shot of him being alone on Mars looking at photos of his family, it's clear to me that he's made the choice for the time being, and he's choosing to stay put, rather than going back home and being with the people that he cares for and care for him. Time will tell if his condition will deteriorate and if he will eventually return. With Danny going to Mars, the familiarity of an old face might help him see sense. Danny's return to Mars. During this episode, we saw that Danny was living life as one usually would once they retired. She was enjoying time with people that she cared about and didn't have a worry in the world. But it was towards the end of the episode where we saw that she was tempted to come out of retirement and take on the position of Commander of Happy Valley, following Colonel Peters being stripped of his title due to the accident that happened to Grigori taking place during his tenure. At first, it seemed like Eli Hobson's persuasion wasn't going to work on Danny, as it felt like she was content with the life that she was leading. However, with the final shot of her being on board Unity, which was headed for Mars, the position was something which clearly took her interest. I think we'll see more of her in the next episode. She's back in her element now, and that's where we often see the best of the character. As Eli said, most of the individuals on Mars respect her, so seeing her in the thick of it will be refreshing to see again. Aleida's PTSD. Aleida didn't have too heavy of an involvement in this episode, but what we did see was extremely important. She was working well at NASA and she brought her son to work. However, it was on the day of the incident where Grigori was killed that we saw that she had some kind of PTSD kick in, and she was overwhelmed by the panicked alerts, the windows on the screen, and the voices that were being raised. During this time, we saw that we were taken back to the explosion that occurred in Season 3 of the show, the explosion that she was caught up in and the one where Karen ended up being killed, so it's clear to see that she's still being impacted by it. With her having 4 missed calls, which went on to be 5, and her lying about working from home, it does make me worry about the future of the character. Hopefully we'll see her get the help that she needs, but it's safe to say that it's going to be turbulent. Margo's stagnant life. During this episode, we saw Margo's life in Russia and how it had grown to become quite stagnant. With her being promised to be a consultant, it very much seemed as though it was Groundhog Day for her, and she was waiting for the phone to ring. She'd go to the park, eat her pastry, feed the birds, and watch the world go by, something which didn't feel like was up her street at all. With Margo getting tired of waiting around, it seemed like the opportunity was never going to arrive due to being told that she hadn't headed up NASA in almost 10 years, and they pretty much said that they deemed her to be useless. But there was one interesting moment that followed this. There was a woman who approached Margo in the park who claimed to know who she was, and told her to be patient like the birds that were in front of her. Patient because the time will come for her. This could mean a wide array of things. However, with the director of the space agency in Russia telling her to leave and to not come back, the feature of this random woman and her phone number could mean that the political landscape could be changing. With us hearing that the Cold War was over at the start of the episode, things may not be as they seem, and tensions could still rise once again, as after all, it is an alternative timeline. Who is Miles? Toby Kebbell has joined the show in this season, and he's joined as the character Miles, offshore rig worker who was out of a job and fighting to stay in his marriage to his wife Mandy. Personally, I found their relationship a bit weird. She wanted to divorce him, but the moment that he said that he was going for a job, she didn't press as much. And then when he got a job, they were intimate with one another. I don't know if it's just not that great writing, but it felt a little two-dimensional. Hopefully that will change as time goes on. Miles was looking to go to the moon and work there. However, with him wanting to provide for his family and fighting to be with his wife, with the earliest spot to work there being in 2005, 2 years from where we were, and with him also lying about attending college, he felt like there was no hope. But as he was walking out, he was offered the opportunity to work on Mars instead, a place with slightly more risk, and it also meant that he wouldn't be able to return home as often. With the final shot of him being on the same spacecraft as what Danny was on, it shows that he's got the opportunity and he's going to go with it. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen with Miles and what his role will be in the show. I feel it's going to be one that's crucial. We heard a lot about his experience working in offshore rigs, so it's clearly been highlighted to show us that he has some experience. With him being positioned as a guy that's going to be doing something that's far greater than what he could have ever imagined in his life, I feel like we're going to see him excel whilst doing it. Overall review. I thought this first episode was good. It established the time period well by the montage at the start, and it entered the 21st century in a way that felt natural and believable. It's clear to see that a lot of things have developed between Season 3 and Season 4, especially with us hearing that most of NASA's technology was now obsolete from that time. Plus, with Happy Valley looking like it's thriving and it seeming like they're recruiting members of the public to get on board and work on the development plans and the mining of the asteroids, things seem to be going okay, for now at least. Miles' arc is one that definitely interests me, because he's going to be the fresh eyes of it all, and I'm intrigued to see where he fits into it. I'm also really interested in seeing what's going to happen with Edward and the grief that he's feeling, but also the confliction of wanting to go back to Earth to see his family, but knowing that he most likely won't be able to go back up if he does land. His passion for outer space and his love for his family are two things that are at war with one another, so I'm intrigued to see which one's going to win. I know we're on Season 4, but those shots where it just cuts to silence in outer space, and you know that in reality, if it were on Earth, it would be so loud, are moments that I just love watching. It really makes you feel like you're there, and it transports you through the screen, something that I think this show is often good at, because as well, unrealistically, every time period is executed so well, and you feel like the alternative chain of events could actually be happening. I'm looking forward to seeing where this story's going to go and exactly how the different forms of grief of parts of their lives, such as Edward's, Aleida's, Danny's and Margo's, are going to develop and resolve. Bring on the next episode. So, there you have it. For All Mankind Season 4 Episode 1, Ending Explained.